So you know the formula, the talking points on the left. A couple of minutes for Jane and Sam to discuss. And the first subject is the start at Epsom yesterday, which involved William Buick on Blue Trail. At the start of the race, a horse leans over, I think it's approachability, and the horse's head clips William Buick. Quite a serious blow, Jane. And then this sequence of events ensues, yet the gates are opened, Blue Trail leaves, William Buick is still holding on to the side of the railing.
We have to start by saying this was a disaster averted, essentially, because A, William could have been hung up if his feet were properly in the irons. B, he could have actually started on Blue Trail and been semi-concussed, going around, not aware of his surroundings, and then being a danger not only to himself but those around him. We have pictures, but we don't have volume. We're getting evidence from both sides, the jockeys and the starter. Robbie Supple, we've been told that there was a helicopter overhead which impeded what Robbie Supple could hear. We were told that the starting procedure had been initiated, which to me, it's press a button. Unless I'm wrong, I think you have control of right up until the last second. So it was a disaster averted, and what more can you say?
Yeah, it's just a huge relief all round, really. You know, having seen the sort of the volume of the impact there, for William to then go on and ride later on in the afternoon was a little bit of a surprise for me, to be honest. But he seemed to brilliant effect on Midnight's Legacy, wasn't he? But I hope that this isn't just swept under the carpet. I hope there's a good, root and branch review of this procedure, because it is very dangerous for those lads in the stalls. You know, you've got half a ton of racehorse underneath you. A lot of noise going on at Epsom, other racecourses as well. Atmosphere is pretty vociferous around there. You know, we've got highly strung thoroughbreds. If we're not going to look after the jockeys that are in those confined spaces, then, we have an issue.
Is there anything from the sequence of events that we saw yesterday that we can learn from to avoid...
Mics on the stalls?
It's a noisy enough surrounding anyway, because you've all these jockeys and they might all have individually their own issues, and the rider of approachability would have told the starter no, because his horse was obviously, and then he, we're literally speculating because we don't know what was said, but we were told that the jockeys were shouting at the starter. Yeah. So look, the basic rule goes, when a trainer or jockey or an owner gets things wrong, they get fined, they get reprimanded. What will happen here? I don't suspect a lot.
Well, let's hope that we can learn from these situations. The last thing we want to do is a situation like that happen, I always think, and as you say, Sam, it gets brushed away and we move on. We ought to take what we can from it to ensure that, should the situation, it's not going to be the last time a horse rears up and potentially knocks a rider. So let's see whether there's something that can be learnt for it. The next subject, we spoke about it briefly earlier on when we had Richard Kingscote in the studio. The fireworks going off before the Derby, pretty close to the start of the Derby, with horses down at the start. In your opinion, Sam, good, bad, indifferent? Where do you stand on this?
Bad. I don't think anybody would have walked off Epsom racetrack yesterday, and if we hadn't have had fireworks and gone, do you know what would have really enhanced my experience of Derby Day? Having a few fireworks go off just before the Derby. I think there was plenty of gravitas all the way through the card. The band, all the pomp and pageantry, superb. They built the atmosphere very well. I just don't think you needed those fireworks. Particularly myself, I was stood in the stand with the throngs of people. It took 5 years off my life expectancy. I didn't expect them to go off. So I jumped about a foot in the air. And then the whole stand was sort of shrouded in the smoke of it as well. It just wasn't a very pleasurable experience. And there was a lot of people looking around going, really, should we be having long, loud bangs and crashes, 2 minutes before the Derby? So I just found it all a bit of just an unnecessary experience, to be honest.
Jane is someone who understands horses, close to them. What's your view?
I was so taken aback. I was talking about how we had a shot of them on Racing TV circling at the start and how relaxed they were, and then bang, this thing goes up and sounds like a bomb, and then you're thinking, okay, so the trainers and the jockeys are after doing everything right for this date with destiny for their horse, to get him down there as calm as they can, and next thing you have literally this bonfire going off. I just thought, who thought this was a good idea in an event where these are thoroughbreds, high-octane thoroughbreds, trained to the minute for this particular race. This is the race that every horse wants to be in, and every trainer wants to be a part of, and every jockey wants to be riding in. And I think it could have jeopardised a horse's chance. I'm not saying it did, but it could have.
It just wasn't required. And I wonder whether whoever came up with the idea actually sort of commissioned the opinions of Aidan O'Brien, Sir Michael Stout, Ryan Moore, etc. I mean, I know it was tested. It wasn't the first time that they'd let the fireworks off. They'd been across there and tested them to see whether they did make a major impact, but still unnecessary.
Okay. Next subject, pretty enjoyable to chat about, I think. Desert Crown versus Baaeed. I'm assuming 10 furlongs in the Juddmonte.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a sight to see? And if you're asking me to pick a horse to come out on top of your...
Yes,
how would you bet?
Good question.
Baaeed would be favourite. But Desert Crown is, you know, he's on this upward trajectory, and where is he going to stop? And I thought he won, you know, ease down yesterday. A lot of people will say, oh, Westover, and he didn't get out and whatever. But who's to say when Westover was going to get to the tails of Desert Crown that he wouldn't take off
the
again?
best horse won the Derby, I think, yesterday.
Yeah.
How do you see the matchup? Who's going to win Desert Crown versus Baaeed? 10 furlongs in the Juddmonte.
I think Baaeed deserves to be favourite over 10 furlongs.
Yeah, probably with breeding, his style of racing, the track, probably yes, over 10. But I still think Desert Crown's got more to offer over 10 if they want to go that way.
All right. So you don't think that Baaeed will brush him away like he's done everything else?
No, he definitely won't brush him away. What do you think?
I like Desert Crown.
Yeah.
I think
He's got York experience as well.
I think Desert Crown is even better than we think he might. I think the whole package, in the way he travels, the way he quickens, and the fact he's clearly got stamina, which we know about. Baaeed still has to do it over 10. It's an assumption still, even though everything he says suggests that he's going to be very good over 10 furlongs, maybe even over further. But Desert Crown, I think, has already done it. So in terms of, you know, a mile and a quarter, a mile and a half, that's how I would go. Anybody else that you'd throw in the mix?
We're always tempted to go with potential rather than what we know. And we know Baaeed is the heavyweight, so...
Native Trail?
Jim Crowley was taken by Bay Bridge.
Yeah, well, Stout, will he run the two of them against each other?
Well, I don't know. Poets Word, Crystal Ocean ran against Workforce, Harbinger.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, he might have an option, different connections.
Yeah, he's happy to... He's a sportsman. He's happy to pitch them in.
What a race that would be.
It would be. Okay. Derby Day blackout. Now, this is a subject that has annoyed quite a few people on social media and quite a few people watching the racing yesterday on Racing TV with the clashes. Listowel clashed with Epsom yesterday. What is your view of races being run time-wise close to the greatest flat race in the world?
It was infuriating yesterday. We had 15 minutes of a clean preparation to the Derby. The gates open in Epsom and the gates open at Listowel, and we had split screen. It was unavoidable, whatever. I think there should be a 20-minute window pre-race and post-race for the Derby, where there's nothing else happening in the world of racing, only the Derby. Because I have been in Wexford during Cheltenham. I have been in these lesser or smaller tracks when there's a big clash. And we're all in the waiting room, like, not wanting to go out because we want to see what's happening in the big race. So I don't think anybody would be disappointed or dismayed if we had a blackout for 40 minutes, 20 minutes either side, so that we can give the biggest race that's happening in the world at that moment credence, both pre and post race.
That seems sensible.
Preaching to the converted hit. I mean, I did a shift when we covered Ascot, and we had a jumps race running into the Queen Anne, pretty much, you know, first race on the Tuesday, Royal Ascot, and we had a jumps race, a 3-mile handicap chase or something. And, you know, I remember saying to Angus, this is just ridiculous, and we haven't moved on from it. That's the problem I've got. I think all the Group 1s and all the Grade 1s, they should be ring-fenced. I know it's difficult, but we've got some great minds. They should be able to get together and work out a plan. And if that means shifting some meetings to twilight meetings or bringing some forward or whatever, but making sure that we can actually showcase these crown jewels of our sport.
Yeah, we're talking about selling the sport and making things better. People can't even watch the race properly.
When it is the biggest of all races, it
people around the world are trying to watch the race.
It deserves to be the centre of attention, without question. And let's hope, again, that lessons are learned and we can be better in future. The next topic is Jo Saumarez-Smith, who's replacing Anna-Marie Phelps at the top of the British Horse Racing Authority. It's not something that I would want myself. It's a difficult task, a difficult role. What effect do you feel, listening to what Jo Saumarez-Smith has had to say in the media in the last week or so, he is going to have.
Well, this is a bit above my pay grade, I'm honest, because I'm just a tipping monkey. But obviously he's well steeped in bookmaker tradition, which I think has to be good given the precarious nature we are at the moment with affordability checks. What's going to happen with that, who only knows, which therefore affects the funding of the sport. I think he's got a fairly hefty in tray, if I'm honest. We're finding a good way of shooting ourselves in the foot at the moment as an industry, whether it be racecourse abandonments, whether it be affordability checks, whether it be this, that, restrictions of accounts, all that sort of stuff. He's going to have to try and find and navigate a way through all that and hopefully in his 18-month tenure try and make a little bit of an impact. I hope he does. I really hope he does. I hope he sort of puts himself out there and we can hear from him a little bit more and he could be a bit more proactive in that.
Jane, I think one of the hardest things is seeing ourselves the actual change. Where's the manifestation of change that so many people have come in at the top of the sport and spoken of?
Well, I think what we could see, and I would hope to see, is real leadership, meaningful leadership, making things happen. Because I know in the UK you're a little bit fragmented with the Horsemen's Group and PJ in different areas, and the little things like, I say the little things, but taking 300 races off the race programme, this has been on the agenda for a while. But who's actually going to push that through? And is it just going to be spoken about and debated and then keep stalling and all of a sudden the programme's made and it can't be made until another 12 months and it gets pushed back? So you mentioned he's only going to be in the position for 18 months. I hope he really gets everybody motivated to make progressive change.
Well, it's a familiar theme we're talking about in that respect. Let's hope that change does happen. The next topic is racing expenses. Now, there is a tweet that accompanied this particular subject, and within this tweet, it's from Solway Racehorses. It says, 2 races in May, 3rd in the chase, 1st in the chase, total prize money, £2,400. Amateur jockey doesn't get paid. BHA charge full riding fees, winning percentages, amateurs and owners given a raw deal, training fees and transport leaves 0. Things need to improve. There's also a breakdown of costs and prize money that's received as well, and at the end of it there's very little to show for winning a race and being 3rd in the race in the space of 8 days. What's going on? I mean, how could this be a potential, or how could this be a sell for the sport?
But this isn't new. This is happening all the time, and there's expenses in racing. Nobody gets into racing ownership to make a profit. Like, if you are, then you're going to just lose. But you want to have some way of an enjoyability and some realistic chance of paying back for your training expenses if you do have some success. But the prize money is pitiful. I was an amateur rider, and it was up to the credence of the trainer and the owner whether you got paid, and often you didn't get paid. That, as an amateur, is in the name. But for the owner, I think it's despicable.
Well, what was new to me is that the riding fee is then sort of swallowed up by the powers that be. That happens in Ireland as well, does it?
Yeah.
So you still pay a riding fee as an owner, but the rider doesn't get it. It just goes into the ether.
Well, in Ireland, if I can't speak in the UK, but if you ride in an amateur race, it doesn't get charged. But if you're riding in a professional race, then the fee goes. But of course, there's no fee associated with amateur races in Ireland. But it's just when you're spending, like the Land Rover sale at Goffs is next week, and horses will be costing nearly 100 grand, over 100 grand. And to justify putting a horse in training in the UK when you're running in bumpers worth 2 grand is just, they're saints.
But the appetite's still there though, isn't it? The appetite is still
But
there.
how long will it be there for if this continues?
I wonder why Ireland are doing better than... Sorry. But it's obvious. Prize money is a massive issue. And the final subject, racecourse abandonment. Now, we had, obviously, Lingfield, Chester, Haydock, Beverley last week. Catterick on Friday, Bend, slipping, inspection taking place, more concerns. Obviously, there's been a lot of chat at Epsom over the Derby weekend about the ground and watering and rainfall, etc. It's a very precarious time for a clerk of the course.
Yes, and a lot of people have become ground experts in the last week, and I won't pretend to be one of those. I know we've had an uncharacteristically dry spring, but is this something that's going to happen going forward? Because for the last couple of years, we've had unusual weather patterns, and I don't think we should be blaming the weather. We should just try and get it as right as we can. I was actually in Lingfield on Monday. I walked the track, I met the clerk of the course, and I actually took the stick from him and put it into the ground, and it was good to firm, but that was as described. So each race course, the BHA are in their release, they said they want to find a common, reason for this. I don't think you have to find a common reason for it. Every track has different rail configuration, every different gradients. I honestly don't know what the reason is, but when it comes to ground, there's very little more important when it comes to racing, because that's the welfare of the horse.
If jockeys haven't got confidence going into a bend at 35, 40 miles an hour, then, you know, you're not really going to have a sport, are you? I wonder whether, I mean, we talked about it a little bit off air, you know, is there a case for almost setting up, not a schooling race, but like a piece of work before racing starts, where a trader will put an extra one on the box, 2 jockeys will perhaps go around, just check that everything's okay.
You need to do that.
I know, but it's an expensive resolution to a problem, but it's not as expensive as calling a meeting off halfway through.
I would argue you could overwater the bends. I don't think there would be anybody have an issue with an extra water on the bend, because you'll get extra grip.
More traction then.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would be adverse to that, and if they were, I'd love to find out their reasoning why.
Well, we are once again in precarious territory, but hopefully the worst of those might be behind us and things can improve with that respect. That has been this week's Talking Points. Well, we're in the closing stages of today's programme. Just time for your final thoughts, Jane, on what you saw at Epsom and what excites you most for next rest of the season.
Well, I was so pleased to be there, number one, and to be part of a great team. Was
that the first time you've been to Epsom?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a fabulous experience, and I'm so happy that the race turned out to be as good as it was and threw up a real star. So I'm pleased that I was there, and onwards and upwards.
A few people knocking the race already because there's big prizes that have finished second and fourth. We should say Andrew Baldy, what a training performance, second and fourth. But I remember the first derby I went to, Nashwan's Derby, and Terramon finished second at 500 to 1 or 250 to 1, didn't he?
Don't underestimate the strength of the Derby form. Sam, Jane, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously a lot more still to come today on Racing TV, but that is it from Luck on Sunday. Bye-bye.